time about my shitty ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that, he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag like for part 2. Part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm gonna be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. Well, I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at? My boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never in a relationship. Story time about how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So a little background information. This all happened last year. So originally I was working in a warehouse, but whenever COVID hit, lost my job, I had to get a new job. So I applied at Walmart in the electronics section because they paid more money, period. And on my second day, I finally went and started working in electronics. So they had asked some of the employees to show me around. So while this one employee was showing me around, he took me to the back where the photos were. Well, whenever I got back there, this employee named Terry said, "Oh, she's mine." I just laughed and brushed it off because I felt super uncomfortable and awkward. And he knew I was underage because my name tag was yellow. But even after that, he still kept coming up to me, calling me weird names, just being a total creep. Like, he would keep coming up to me and get super close to me to the point where I could literally feel him fucking breathing on my face. So of course I told my manager about it. They said he's done this before, so I was like, why the fuck is he still here? So they moved me to garden. And while I was working in the gardening section, I met this guy named Jordan. Like for a part 2. Part 2 of how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. Something I forgot to mention in the first part, I reported Terry several times and they still did nothing about it. So like I said, then I met this kid Jordan, him and I started getting close, and work actually started to become fun. Well, finally, after a month, we decided that we were going to go out to lunch during work. So the day that we went out to lunch, he kept telling me that he needed to tell me something. But he was like beating around the bush the whole time. Like for some reason, he just couldn't get out what he wanted to tell me. But then he kept trying to change the subject like he wasn't the one who brought it up in the first place. I should have took that as a red flag before we went to lunch, but I didn't. So he keeps going on about it in the car, right? And then he's like, I'm not really 20, I'm 25 turning 26. So then for some reason after that, whenever he saw my mood change, this guy has the audacity to start touching my legs, fucking rubbing my inner thigh and shit. I kept telling him to stop. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? So then I told him I'm getting out of the car. And he says, I'm not gonna let you like for part 3. Part 3 of how I got sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So like I said, he wouldn't let me out of the car, but then we got back to work. And then he had the audacity to keep asking if I was okay when he literally just sexually harassed me in the car. So I went to the bathroom, literally had a whole fucking mental breakdown. I called my mom to come get me because I was not finna stay there. So the next time that I went back to work, I grabbed my stuff and I gave it to one of the workers to go and give to a manager and tell them that I was quitting. Well, one of the managers caught me walking out the back door and she was like, what's wrong? So I immediately broke down. I started telling her what was going on. And then a crowd of people came around us being nosy as fuck, listening to what I was saying. And she was like, you're not quitting. I'm gonna take care of this. So she sent me home and she said that she would call me whenever it was taken care of. So 2 days goes past, I'm like, why the fuck hasn't she called? So then I call and I found out that she fired me. So I reported everything to Walmart ethic team and they just closed my case. They basically didn't do shit about it. Oh, and Jordan wasn't really a manager, he was a supervisor. Should I try to take this to court? Story time, my dad got my half-brother's girlfriend pregnant. A little background information. This all happened a few years ago. Anyways, my brother was fresh out of high school and he had been dating this girl named Serena for 2 years. And my dad, for some reason, hated her. At least that's what we thought. Well, my brother didn't have a license at the time, so every time that she came over, she needed somebody to drop her off at home. So my dad would always offer to drop her off at home, even though he literally hated her. And he could have just ordered her an Uber, which is what he did with all of my friends. Well, the one night her parents called and they were like, hey, is Serena still there? She hasn't came home yet. And my dad said that he was dropping her off. So I called my dad and he said that they ran out of gas on the side of the road. So that was just one incident. Well, the next morning my mom goes to get in the car for work and she finds a thong in the car. So she brings it in the house and she asks me, hey, is this yours? Meanwhile, I had never seen them before. So then she goes and asks my half-brother and my dad's whose they are, for part 2. Part 2 about how my dad got my half-brother's girlfriend pregnant. So like I said, my mom found that thong in the car. She came and asked me if it was mine. I said no. So then she asked my dad and my brother whose they were. So she asked my dad first. He said, I don't know whose they are. He said they probably just fell out of Serena's bag. And then she asked my brother. And my brother said, oh, those are Serena's. So after that, my brother came in my room. And he was like, do you think it's weird that the same underwear that Serena was wearing before she left ended up in the car? So I guess she had the underwear on literally before she fucking left the house. Dumb bitch alert. Anyway, so a few weeks later, Serena breaks up with my brother. Well, around the same time, my dad started staying after work really late, every day of the week. Well, long story short, my mom went through his phone because she felt like something was going on, and she reads a conversation between my dad and Serena. Oh, I'm so sad that you couldn't come to the ultrasound. So then my mom and him divorced, and he's currently raising his child with Serena. Story time, my boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. It was my junior year in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for 4 months. Well, the one night him, his friend, and I were all supposed to go to this party. My boyfriend ended up getting called into work that night, so his friend and I went. Which my boyfriend was fine with because he wanted his best friend to keep an eye on me, but he also trusted us. Anyway, so his friend and I ended up going to the party, and then but the next morning I woke up, I didn't remember that at all. So fast forward, I find out that I'm pregnant. Well, me forgetting that I totally cheated on my boyfriend, I thought that it was his. Well, a week later, I get a text from his friend. And he's like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what are we gonna do? So then he filled me in on the whole situation that I didn't remember. But I was like, there's really no chance of this because my boyfriend and I fucked a million times and me and you fucked once. The real tea is that my boyfriend was black and his friend was white. Well, me being the bitch that I am, I was like, well, let's just wait it out. I bet it's not his. For part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. So like I said, my boyfriend was black, his best friend was white, and because I doubted that it was his best friend's kid, I decided to wait it out. Say it with me, bad idea. So fast forward, I'm in the delivery room and I decide not to have my boyfriend in there. Well, let's just say good thing that he did. Bitch, whenever this thing popped out, it was white as fucking paper. So I was like to the doctor, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a panic attack. Please get the baby out of the room. I don't want anybody around the baby right now. So when my boyfriend came back in the room, I was like, oh, we can't see the baby. He's having some issues. He's over here freaking out. I'm having a fucking panic attack about what I'm gonna do. And they brought my kid back and I was like, that's not my kid. And this girl looked so confused. She was like, oh, okay. And my boyfriend and I are laughing. We're like, oh, haha, that's funny. Then she comes back into the room and she's like, ma'am, this is your kid. So my boyfriend started screaming, and he broke up with me after that. How rude to just leave me with a kid by myself. No, I'm just joking. I know that was pretty fucked. Story time about one of the most embarrassing things that has ever happened to me in high school. So a little background information. I was in my freshman year of high school. Well, spring break was coming up. Well, the whole year, my friend and I hadn't been to one single party. So we decided that we wanted to try and go to a party every single day of spring break, which was about to be super difficult because we had to worry about my strict-ass parents and my neighbors. A little background info on my neighbor. My neighbor is this girl who's in my same grade, and she literally hates my guts. I don't know why, but literally anything that I do, she'll go and she'll tell her mom, and then her mom will tell my mom, because my mom and her mom are best friends. But before we know it, Saturday comes around, and we go back to school on Monday. We did not make it to one single party. Well, later that night, we found out that one of our friends was throwing one. So around 11 o'clock, everybody's sleeping, and I walk out my back door, hop over my fence, and I start heading towards the road where my friend was going to be parked. You know, who do I see fucking sitting outside on their porch reading a fucking book? My fucking neighbor. For part 2. Part 2 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, the bitch that I hate is sitting out on her porch reading a fucking book at 11 o'clock at night. So I crouched down so she couldn't see me. I run to the car and my friend and I finally go to the party. Well, we get to that party and it's really boring, so we decided to go to a different one. And the party that we were about to go through was being thrown by the kid that I really liked. So I start hanging out with him when we get there. I'm drinking a lot, having so much fun, and I really have to go to the bathroom. And I didn't know where anything was at all. So I grabbed my friend and we're looking around everywhere for the bathroom. Because when I asked him, he was super drunk and really couldn't explain to me where the bathroom was. So we were pretty much left to fend for ourselves. But we ended up not being able to find a bathroom, and this is where I had to improvise. So my friend and I go to the laundry room and we see the litter box in there for the cat. Well, at this point, I was desperate, so I just went in the litter box. Well, 30 minutes later, the cops show up to the party. And everybody had to hurry up and leave because we did not want to get underages. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in high school. So like I said, I went in the litter box and then the cops showed up. We all ran because we didn't want to get underages. I was able to sneak back into my house without anybody knowing. But when I get to school on Monday, everybody's talking about the party. And apparently the kid that I liked who threw the party, his parents didn't know that he threw one at all. And this was like during first period. So I went to text him and ask him if he was grounded because we were supposed to hang out the next day. And I realized that I am blocked. So I'm thinking, what the fuck? Why does he have me blocked? So I told my friend that he blocked me, and she goes, it's probably because he saw what you did in the laundry room. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no fucking way that he knows. Because there was a door that led to the outside in the laundry room, there were cameras in there. So everybody saw this video of me. People were posting it on their Finstas, posting it on their Snapchat stories. It was so fucking embarrassing. Not to mention the bitch that I hate who lives next door showed my parents the fucking video, and I was grounded for fucking 4 months. Storytime about how I walked in on my fiance and another man. So a little background information. My fiance and I have been together for 4 years, and we started dating our junior year of high school. Well, we all went to Florida after we finally got engaged, and he invited his best friend and I invited my best friend. And I always got vibes that he was like really touchy with his best friend and just like other guys. But I was definitely not one of those people who was about to tell my boyfriend how to act. During Truth or Dare or something, someone would dare him to kiss like a guy and he would just do it. And I didn't really get any off vibes from that because I just did not think that way. So like I said, we all invited our friends to Florida. Well, I think like the third night that we got there, we all decided to go to the club. And we were having a super good time. Like everybody was just doing their own thing. I was with my girls. We were hanging out, taking shots. My boyfriend and his best friend, they were doing body shots off of each other. But my boyfriend said that he had drank too much, so his best friend took him back to the hotel room. Y'all will not believe what happened next. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found my boyfriend and his best friend hooking up. So like I said, my boyfriend's best friend took him back to the hotel room. And I really wanted to spend time with him because we were only supposed to be there for like 3 days. So I decided I would go back to the hotel room early to go see him and make sure that he was okay. Well, I get to the hotel room and all the lights are off. It's very quiet and I think that everybody's sleeping. So I take my shoes off and I go to our room and nobody's in there. So I go to his best friend's room and when I open the door, I see him and his best friend laying on the bed naked, making out. I literally stood there in shock for like 2 minutes and they just like did not hear me, did not look over, did not see me or anything. Eventually, I literally was like, what the fuck? And they both look over and my boyfriend is literally, it's like he saw a fucking ghost. I leave the room, he gets dressed, he comes over to me and he starts talking to me. Like for part 3. 3 about me finding my boyfriend and his best friend hooking up. So like I said, after I catch my boyfriend and his best friend naked together in bed making out, he takes me into the living room to have a talk. And I thought he was just gonna say, oh, I'm drunk, it didn't mean anything. Nope, complete 360, total opposite, not at all what I thought. He was like, listen, like, you know, I've been meaning to tell you this for a while. I just didn't know how to tell you. My parents are super religious. If I ever told them that I was gay, they would never accept me. They would cut me off, everything. And his parents were super fucking rich. So I kind of understood, but I was pissed the fuck off. Like, you wasted so much time in my life just to fucking tell me you were gay. So he was like, we can still have the wedding and everything like that. You know, I understand if you don't want to be with me. So we kind of made a deal that, you know, if I stay with him, I can pretty much have access to all his family's money. I can buy the house that we were going to buy. So currently, while he is hooking up with other men, I have a boyfriend, but we just act like we're together. Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy, and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie, and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me, and my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, the guy was being super flirty with me, inviting me to the movies when my mom wasn't home and all that stuff. Well, then it led to more than just that. By the way, this guy did not have a job, so he was home with me 24/7. And I was doing online school. So we were in the house by ourselves, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Anyways, like I said, it led to more, and we started doing the nasty and stuff. Ew, just, yeah. Well, the one day after we got done doing the nasty in my mom's room, we had fell asleep. And yes, we did not have clothes on. Well, at 2 in the morning, I hear someone pounding on the bedroom door, and my mom worked night shifts. So we get up, he hurries up and gets dressed and tells me to hide under the bed, and he opens the door, and it's my mom's sister. My sister literally lived in the apartment next door, and she was like, oh yeah, neither of you were answering the phone, so she wanted me to check on you guys, like, where's Elena? And I'm still under the bed naked, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, I'm laying under the bed, no clothes on. She asks where I am. And he's like, oh, she should be in her room. So he goes looking for me everywhere with her. And he's like, oh, well, maybe she's outside on the patio. And I don't know why the hell my mom's sister had a key to our apartment anyways. But she's still looking for me in the apartment, and she looks under the fucking bed. And at first she's like, oh my god, what did he do to you? And I'm trying to tell her nothing, like I made that decision on my own. So she calls my mom right away. My mom comes home, she's screaming at me, and she kicks me out. So I go to my grandma's house, and I told my grandma what happened. And my grandma calls her, and she's like, it's not her fault that you gave her daddy issues. And I'm like, bruh, what the fuck? Child, anyways, so then she goes on Facebook and starts posting about how I'm a whore and a slut and how, like, it isn't her boyfriend's fault at all. So now I live story time about the girl who beat my ass because she found out I hooked up with her dad. A little background information. I was a junior in high school and I was looking for a job to save up some money for college. So I decided I would try out babysitting. Well, one of the senior girls told me that her parents were looking for a babysitter during the weekdays for her younger sister. And I was like, period, because I needed to make some money. So she gave me her dad's phone number and I texted him the next day. Well, fast forward, I had been babysitting them for a month at this point. Well, during the winter time, this girl's mom had to go to LA for a business trip. And the trip was like 4 days long, Monday through Thursday. Or at least she was supposed to come home Thursday morning. So I was there every day of the week watching their daughter pretty much. Wednesday night I had to sleep over because their dad was going to a bachelor party. My parents were fine with it because my bus stop was like right outside their house. So I was sleeping on the couch and I heard her dad stumbling at like 3 in the morning. He was drunk as hell, and I don't really remember a lot. All I know is that we kissed. Turns out the mom set up nanny cams before I started babysitting. Friday morning I was just sitting on the bus and their older daughter came up to me and punched me right in my face. Story time, I had to go to jail because of my toxic ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. Him and I started dating right after high school. And this relationship was so fucking toxic. We would literally fight over the dumbest shit. So fast forward 4 years later, the one night he had his friends over and he wanted me to cook steak. I decided to cook chicken instead. And this is what triggered the entire fucking fight. He was saying things like, you never listen to what I say, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife type of shit. So he pretty much blew up and was like trying to kick me out of our house. He went to our master bedroom, started breaking all my shit, throwing it down the stairs, and his friends left me there with his crazy ass. So I tried to get him to stop, but he wouldn't, of course. So then he ended up calling his fucking sister, who is 10 years older than me, trying to get her to come to my house and kick my ass. I never really got in a fight like this, so I decided to call 911. She heard him in the background going crazy like for part 2. Part 2 of why I had to go to jail because of my toxic ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the dispatcher on the phone could hear him in the background going absolutely fucking psycho. So she told me to hide. I ran upstairs into the master bedroom and locked the door until they came. So they interviewed us separately. And he has the nerve to start fucking crying, saying that I was beating his ass, and he even fucking scratched himself. So even though I called 911, they said in a domestic dispute they had to take somebody to jail. And since he had visible marks on him, they took me to jail. So the police officer told me to take off all my clothes and to only wear one layer and to also take out my shoelaces before he brought me in. So they booked me in jail, put me in a freezing cold fucking cell with 25 other actual bad bitches for 7 hours. And this is the best part. My ex kept trying to call and get me out the whole time I was in there, saying that he lied and everything. They set a court date for me, but when I showed up, they literally just dropped all the charges. Now I just tell everybody that I've been to jail and I'm not scared to go back. Story time about my boyfriend's crazy ex-girlfriend. So a little background information. So his ex-girlfriend's parents, they owned a security company, which sold cameras, alarms, and a few other things. So at the end of 2019, my boyfriend broke up with his ex-girlfriend. And by March of 2020, he started seeing me. And at first, we were just keeping things on the down low. Anyways, so after maybe 3 weeks of seeing my boyfriend, his ex sent me an Instagram message calling me a slut. It's the obsession for me. Anyways, what's even weirder is that she knew everything about my boyfriend and I, even the sexual things. Anyways, like I said, I thought that was really weird, so everything that she had sent me, I sent straight to him. Because I thought, obviously, that he had still been talking to her and had told her everything about us. But instantly, he gave me his phone and said go through it, and he had her blocked on everything. So even though it was weird, we moved on from that situation. Well, fast forward another 2 weeks, and his ex calls him while I'm at his house. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my boyfriend's crazy ex-girlfriend. So like I said, she had called him while I was over his house. And somehow she keeps figuring out things about our sex life and personal things that we had told each other. So my boyfriend and I got super suspicious, obviously. Then we started to think, and we noticed that everything that she was telling us were things that we had talked about in his bedroom. And things that we had done. So we ransacked his whole room looking for anything. And what do you know, I found a mini security camera and a microphone pointing out of his walk-in wardrobe directly towards the bed. We took it to the police and tracked it back to her. So it turns out she had used the hidden spare key, which his mom kept under the mat at the front door, which she had known about from when they dated. So she broke into his house, planted a security camera from her dad's business in his wardrobe. So we decided not to press charges because her parents and my boyfriend's parents were friends. So they just talked it out and decided to punish her in their own way. Story time about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So a lot of background information. My ex and I were together for almost 2 years, and throughout our whole entire relationship, he had been cheating on me. I'm not surprised though. But what I am surprised about is that he was cheating on me with my best friend. Well, my ex-best friend now. Before my ex and I got together, my best friend had a crush on him for like a week, right? And then she got a boyfriend. And I had asked her, is it okay if I get with him? Like, him and I have been talking, he said that he really likes me. And she said, yeah, of course, that's perfectly fine. I don't care, I don't like him anymore. So I was like, okay, we're all good to go. So a month later, him and I start dating. Well, I found out that he was cheating on me when I went through his phone and saw all these nude pictures of my best friends and videos of them doing the nasty. So I decided I had to get him back. And my best friend, of course. My best friend was still with her boyfriend. But her boyfriend was my ex-boyfriend's best friend. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So I'm just gonna throw this in here real quick. I'm pretty sure the only reason why my best friend did all that stuff with my ex was because she was pissed off at me for actually dating him. Because from what I had heard through other people who knew that she was doing that with my boyfriend, they said that she didn't talk to him or anything anymore. And that she really actually loved her boyfriend that she was with. Little TMI. Throughout my boyfriend and I's whole relationship, he would beg me to be open-minded while being intimate. And he would want to do things that I really just did not want to do. And there was a long list of things that he wanted me to do. So a week later, I told her boyfriend, but I told her boyfriend not to tell her because of my plan. And that whole week, my boyfriend was apologizing to me, saying he was so sorry and that he wants me back, blah, 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 blah. And my best friend thought that her boyfriend was loyal as fuck. Not anymore. So I told him about my plan, which was to do everything that my boyfriend begged me to do during our whole relationship with him. And for him, it would just be enough to send it to her because she thought he was loyal. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my ex-boyfriend back for cheating on me. So like I said, I told her boyfriend my plan and everything like that, and he was on board right away. So he came over to my house, we did all that good shit. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys. My ex-best friend had begged me not to tell her boyfriend. She was like, you don't get it, like I really love him, like I really don't want to lose him. And I told her that I wouldn't tell him. But I don't really know what her boyfriend did. All I know is that I sent the video to my boyfriend. Oh, and also my boyfriend begged me not to tell her boyfriend because they were best friends. But I did it anyways, and like I said, I sent it to him, and I sent him a long paragraph, and then he sent me, oh, how could you do this to me, blah, 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 you just ruined everything for me, things will never be the same between us, and I was like, yeah, okay, good, I don't care, you were a piece of garbage anyways. But however, my ex-best friend, She took her boyfriend back, and now their relationship is toxic as fuck, and he cheats on her all the time. And they've been together now for like 3 years. Karma is a bitch.
Storytime about how my husband hired a really hot assistant and now I want him to fire her, but he won't. Am I the asshole? Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have been together for 4 years. Now, I've never suspected him of cheating, but I have caught him lying to me a few times. A few years back, I checked his Facebook Messenger and caught him messaging another girl. The messages weren't exactly inappropriate, but they were definitely flirty. When I asked him if he was messaging anyone on Facebook, he denied it. That's when I unleashed the beast and told him that I had seen the messages. That's when he told me that he wanted to break up because he didn't want to stop messaging her. This was some random girl that he had met at his job. We actually did break up for a few days, but then he literally begged me on his knees to stay with him. Then I caught him lying a second time. He told me he was going out to dinner with a friend of his who I already knew, and it was a woman. I had no problem with him going out to dinner with her because we already knew each other from a few years back. At the time, I was away for work. After 8 hours, he still hadn't messaged me. I decided to call him, but he didn't answer. That's when I tracked his location and realized that he was somewhere in the city. He finally messaged me telling me that he was home and he was trying to get to sleep. I took a screenshot of his location and sent it to him. Then he called me begging me for forgiveness. He told me he thought I'd probably get jealous if he knew that he was still with her. Obviously, I wasn't gonna get jealous. It was just more upsetting that he lied to me. All of that was a few years ago. Since then, he's always been on his best behavior. About a year ago, my husband started a new company and it's been very successful. So successful that he's hired a full staff. Up until now, all of them have been men. But about a week ago, he told me he needed an assistant. That's when I told him I knew a friend of mine who needed a job. This woman is much older than us and would never be interested in my husband. But my husband told me that he was looking for somebody younger and someone that was interested in the field of work. A few days after that, he had finally hired somebody. I didn't really think anything of it though. By the way, I work in financing, so I'm usually working from home. My husband and I usually meet up for lunch, so I decided to go pick him up from work. But when I got there, a young hot girl asked me if I had an appointment to see my own husband. I told her I was the owner's wife and she laughed it off. She then apologized really quickly but didn't really mean it. Let me tell you how this girl was dressed. She wore a crop top and super tight leggings. She also had a full face of makeup on and her hair was freshly curled. It looked like she was dressed to go to a club, or at least trying to impress someone. Part 2 is up. Part 2, am I the asshole for wanting my husband to fire his hot assistant? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. After I told her I was the owner's wife, she made sure to stand up and show off her body to me. That's when I saw how tight all her clothes were. She then waltzed into my husband's office and tells him that I'm there. My husband quickly came out, almost running, and I asked him if everything was okay. That's when he said, yes, I just wanted to introduce you to my new assistant. Her name is Anna. Anna and I shook hands and I could feel that her palms were sweaty. That's when I knew something was up. My husband told her that she could leave for the day since he was going to be gone for a few hours. And guess what? She insisted on staying until he got back. And it's like she was doing it all because I was there. When my husband and I finally got into the car, I told him that I wanted him to fire her. He started to laugh and asked me why. I told him that the way she was dressed was incredibly inappropriate and that it looked like she was about to go party with all the makeup and hair that she had on. And of course, he told me I was overreacting and that he wouldn't fire her. Then he kissed me and reassured me that he wasn't even attracted to her. I asked him why he hired her and he told me that she was really smart and fast. Then I told him that if he didn't fire her, that him and I would have problems. He got in a bad mood for the rest of the day. Part 3 is up. Part 3, am I the asshole for wanting my husband to fire his hot assistant? This camera is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. After the second time I told him to fire her, he once again said no and got in a really bad mood for the rest of the day. That's when I told him that it was clear that she had a thing for him and that she was obviously dressing up and putting on all that makeup and hair just for him. He told me that she had a boyfriend and that she wasn't interested in him like that. But I don't believe it at all. You know, women's intuition? From the moment I met her, I got the feeling she was trying to show off her body and her palms were sweaty as in she was nervous. That's when I decided I would go to my husband's office every single day. And guess what? I decided to dress up too. I put on a sexy outfit to pick up my husband the following day, and she was dressed in the exact same way. Super tight leggings, crop top, and showing off cleavage. Her hair and makeup were done again. As soon as she saw me coming into the office, she gave me a really dirty look. I asked her if anything was wrong and she said no. I couldn't help myself and I told her that the way she looked at me was weird. Then she apologized and told me that she didn't mean anything by it. My husband came out of his office and told me that Anna, his assistant, had already brought him lunch and that he didn't need to go to lunch with me. I was furious. I gave my husband a kiss and went home. I insisted once again that he needed to fire her later and he said no. So guess what I did? I got myself a really hot personal trainer. Of course, my husband got really jealous. I told him that I wouldn't stop working out with him until he fires his assistant. He thinks I'm being terrible for wanting him to fire her, but I don't trust that girl one bit. And I can't say I trust my husband 100%. Am I the asshole? Anyway, my trainer has been flirting with me hardcore. I'm planning on making my husband as jealous as possible. Bye.
She killed my hamster, so I did even worse. Emily was my best friend in middle school. The reason why we became best friends is because we both liked the color pink. So obviously as kids, you're gonna get excited and that's something you're gonna bond over. So one day she came over to my house and she saw that I had a hamster. She was very fond of this hamster for whatever reason, and she was even jealous, I would say. She said, well, why couldn't I have a hamster? Why couldn't my mommy buy me a hamster? Why do you get to have a hamster? I thought she was joking, but she was serious. So I went to go grab some snacks to the kitchen and I came back into my room. My hamster was gone from my cage. I asked Emily what she did with my hamster and she said she was hiding it, quote unquote. I looked in my drawer and I kid you not, my hamster was dead, suffocated in the bag. I started screaming and crying and my mom kicked Emily out. The next day at school, I came back to a bunch of rumors that I murdered my hamster and that I was the hamster murderer. And this is when the rumors and bullying had started. I'm running out of time, so make sure to follow, copy, link, and share for part 2. Part 2, she killed my hamster, so I did even worse. Since she accused me of killing my own hamster, that's when the bullying had started from there. People called me a hamster killer, hamster torturer, hamster murderer, animal abuser. People started leaving death threats on my desk, teasing me constantly when I do anything. It got so bad that I had to transfer schools. So then when middle school came around, me and Emily went to the same middle school, and she actually had apologized for what she had done. And we made up. But not for what you think. I made up with her so I could get her back. She said she had a boyfriend and introduced me to him, and he was really cute, I'm not gonna lie. So I started texting him on the low. And me and him hooked up regularly. We kept this secret relation going on for up until junior year of high school, I would say. So that's about 4 years. I got to know Emily's secrets and everything. One day while I was busy with her boyfriend, Emily called me out of nowhere saying her dog had died. She hosted a mini funeral in her backyard, and I slept over to comfort her. And this is when I got my plan. Part 2, she killed my hamster, so I did even worse. So while I was sleeping over, I conducted this plan. I was gonna dig up a single bone of her dead dog. I was gonna crush it up and use it on her in some way, shape, or form. So I decided to make her cookies after the sleepover, and I put the dog bones in it, and I literally fed it to her. And I watched her eat it, and it felt so good. So her boyfriend actually ended up breaking up with her because he wanted a relationship with me, but I didn't actually like him. I just was using him to get back at her. So one day after we had finished sleeping together, I had taken a picture of me laying on his chest and I sent it to her. And she was so upset. And then after that, I released the majority of her secrets on a secret page for our high school. And after that, she wasn't seen at school for about a week, and then she came back and then just stopped talking to me entirely. Honestly, I'm glad I got revenge because she killed my hamster. Do you think this person in the story did the right thing, or do you think they went a bit too far? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to follow if you enjoy story times like this. This girl was obsessed with me and my biggest hater. So it was the beginning of my senior year and I met this girl, let's call her Victoria. We first met when I was talking to the teacher and she said, "New here, right?" And I was like, yeah. I don't know why, but I got a weird feeling from her and she gave me creepy vibes. One day I was talking to another friend and she said hi and I said hi back. She was pretty nice and friendly around this time, so maybe I was wrong, but I still had a hunch. We were both Capricorns and pretty artistic. We both love fashion, drawing, singing, etc., etc. We got excited and she wrapped her arm around mine and we started walking, which made me pretty uncomfortable. She complimented my outfit as well and we became acquainted from there on out. Then she started getting more comfortable with me, a little too comfortable. She was very demanding at the time. She would always brag about how much money she had and stuff. One time she mentioned bidding $1,000 over ice cream with her brother and something, and she won. Then she started becoming more and more critical and judgmental and mean. You will not believe what happened next. Come back for part 2. She started doing this thing where she would creepily stare at me constantly, like just stare me down. I remember walking and she just stood there and stared at me while waiting for me. I said hi and then she just walked away. One day I was walking to class in this really cute outfit. I made a left down the hall and she literally stared at me walking down the hallway and I was confused. It was kind of creepy and stalkerish. She told me, "Why are you wearing that?" And I said, "Because I can." "Cause who the freak are you, my mother?" Then we went to lunch. While I was literally putting oil on my sandwich, she was rushing me. I gave her a glare and said she's really impatient. She said, "I know." After that, she asked me to buy some snacks and I said no, cause girl, you can afford $1,000 over some damn ice cream but not no $1 chips. She must have been lying then. From there on out, I decided to ignore her as her karma because she kept bothering me. It made her so mad. One day she stared at me and I told her to stop and she just looked away. After that, she attempted to bully me and talk about me 24/7, but I ignored her. I knew my worth and I don't need someone with negative energy like that in my life. After that, she just stared at me 24/7 and everyone around me noticed. Always know your self-worth and cut those out of negative energy.
Am I the asshole for complimenting a cashier?
My sister thinks I'm the asshole, but I'm confused on how I could be. I was buying a bagel on Thursday and noticed the cashier was rather pretty. She had tattoos, so she was probably at least 18, and she looked around 19 or 20. I completed my order and said, "You know you're gorgeous, right?" To my shock, she gave me a blank stare and looked kind of disgusted. I tried to make conversation with her as I own both and asked her if she's ever been on one. She said, "You're done with your order, right? I think we're done here." She didn't even say thank you and gave me a nasty look. I don't think my compliment was crude or nasty, and her reaction was shocking. My sister said it was weird to give that kind of compliment considering I'm 58, but I wasn't flirting with her.